You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in TRIO software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows TRIO programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former TRIO staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with TRIO. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Trio. This is Season 6, Episode 14. I am your host, Juan Rivas. In today's episode, we have current participant of the Student Support Services program at North Carolina Central University, Kamakshi Velamuri. Kamakshi is on the program to talk about her educational experience, her journey into TRIO SSS, and being a founder and CEO of Universal Vidya. So coming up in just a bit, Kamakshi Velamuri. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario Riley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Jaded Electronics, TrioJoblist.com, NOSOTROS Education Center, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. $1 a month goes a long way in supporting this podcast. If you own a business and would like to run an ad on our podcast, send us a message at letstalktrio@gmail.com. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our business handle is at Let's Talk Trio. Any amount is truly appreciated. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be in the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring Kamakshi Velamuri with the TRIO Student Support Services program at North Carolina Central University. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hi, TRIO Nation. My guest on the Let's Talk Trio podcast is a current student of the TRIO Student Support Services program at North Carolina Central University, studying to get a Bachelor's of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies. She is expected to graduate May 2025. She is the founder, CEO, and president of Universal Vidya, an educational nonprofit that provides essential life skills to high school and university level students on various topics. In her spare time, my guest enjoys cooking for her family and friends, leading her nonprofit team, and working at NCCU on various projects as student leader. Welcome to the podcast, Kamakshi Velamuri. Kamakshi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm very excited and happy to join this wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for taking a bit of your time to speak with me today. I am super excited to be featuring you and your TRIO journey.
Definitely, my pleasure. I've been in the TRIO SSS program since the summer before my first semester at NCCU, so my TRIO SSS experience is my first family and home on campus, and I'm excited to share that journey with everyone.
Wonderful. So how are things in North Carolina currently?
Well, one thing about North Carolina, we all know weather is crazy. And so it's overall okay, but it's just kind of fluctuating every now and then. And even though I've been working on my nonprofit, I've been just having a fun time taking a break before my summer classes, internship, job, and thousand other things I do kind of roll in throughout the summer.
Wow. So you're super, super busy. So you're heading into the summer semester right now. When do classes begin for you for the summer?
Well, one of my classes started literally last Thursday, so kind of in that stage right now. But I'm taking one class in summer session one and one in summer session two. So, and I start a job actually relating to TRIO and first gen students soon. So that's going to
Mhm.
be interesting, and this is all over the summer. So.
Wow. Wow. You are a young entrepreneur. What are some challenges in starting your nonprofit? Because when I heard that you were a CEO and president of this nonprofit organization, I'm like, oh my gosh, you must be super, super busy.
Oh, I am. Or at least I try to like balance everything. But honestly, it was just getting acceptance from our
Hmm.
audience. Because I believe I'm a strong person that can handle entrepreneurial challenges, and I've handled them with time and learning. But acceptance is a huge challenge. And that might be something all of us as leaders might go through. But for me, I started this when I was 16, like in junior
Wow.
year of high school. So
Yeah.
by that, I mean, like, I was always given statements such as, you're a woman entrepreneur, you're young, you're an Asian, you'll be only doing this for a month, and other harsh statements, in other words. And so there's a lot of lack of support and from
Mm.
family and outsiders, including my parents. So me, I am a first generation student and a first generation entrepreneur. And I take that like word of first generation entrepreneur seriously just as much as student. So it's not easy at all for me to continue without my determination, which a lot of people tell me I'm very huge on. So I started the organization when I was junior year of high school. So really like as a 16-year-old with no background, like really any background in entrepreneurship or even higher education system, it was just like really crazy experience. And there was a time at the beginning of my journey where a volunteer that actually was within 50 to 40 years age group stated that I'm too young to lead him on a
Mm.
marketing task
Oh,
for
wow.
organization
Uh-huh.
when he's the marketing volunteer that thought his age and experience was more important than my leadership because of my age.
Mm.
But in fact, if we think about it, I was the founder, CEO, and president, and he was a volunteer. Not, I
Hmm.
mean, I never take that status into consideration. And one thing everybody knows about me, I treat everyone equally, and everybody's just like, we all work together. There's no boss. We're all leaders.
Hmm.
And so, in short, I think my identities that I was born with and had no control over were used negatively against me, which was a challenge because when I started, it was just like, oh, how do I deal with it? But now that I think about it, I just laugh because it's not really, it's just funny that people make that statements. And with time and maturity, I realize it's just, I shouldn't take it to my heart. So I guess that was a long response, but my primary focus was and is always on my mission and purpose. So obviously wouldn't be doing this only to prove them wrong, but
Hmm.
or their statements, but also definitely it was an encouragement, their statements for me to not give up, which I highly appreciate those individuals because thank you, haters. Those statements were really helpful.
Wonderful. I imagine that your nonprofit takes up a lot of your time. So you have to balance between school, your nonprofit, your job. Um, how do you recover after a long, long day of doing all that?
Definitely. And that's really crazy how it changes every time. As time changes, it may change. But right now, I always say sleep is my go-to answer for that.
Mm,
Because I
hmm.
can live days without food, but I can never
Whoa.
live without good sleep. Because I mean,
Hmm.
sometimes I do fast and I never had problems with it. But especially when I work, I'm on that zone. So I can live without eating and just finish work. But if I don't have good sleep, I just can't work. So I tend to either spend time with my family, sleep, focus on myself through my hobbies, but definitely sleep is on my like top one for my recovery method.
Wow. I imagine that a lot goes into your nonprofit, but you also have to commit to your job. Can you tell the audience briefly about what you do that's work on campus or work off campus?
So with work on campus, I've throughout the last 3 years, I'm a junior or I'm a rising senior right now, but
Rising
within
senior,
the
yeah.
last 3 years, I'm excited for graduation, but this last 3 years has been an up and downhill. And I've been part of SGA my starting year, because every time you start your leadership, it typically is the basic leadership group, which
Mm-hmm.
is SGA. So I
Mm-hmm.
started SGA, and then I went through different phases and learned a lot, good and bad, through good and bad experiences. So I went from SGA, I worked with the Division of Student Affairs Department on campus. So the entire chancellors, vice chancellors, assistant vice chancellors kind of group, worked with student accessibility services, first-gen students. I am part of the TRIO SSS, so obviously I've been a member and an active participant of that. But apart from all this, I really help and enjoy helping on campus in terms of diversity inclusion department and register student orgs. I personally have a student org on campus that I started. So I've been working towards that and help students and train student staff and faculty on how to use our platforms for student organizations, registration, and so much more. So I know that typically, if we think about it, a lot of people laugh at me and say, you probably have a 5,000-page resume, which is funny, but again, I gotta do what I gotta do. And I just love, enjoy. And people are like, what do you do for fun apart from all the student leadership? I enjoy my student leadership to a point where that is my social life. And that has
Oh,
like
wow.
just been amazing, helping others, because it just brings me so much joy and satisfaction at the end of the day. But that's kind of the gist of it. But in future though, I've recently gotten a huge opportunity to be the undergraduate coordinator for first gen student success on campus.
Oh,
And so
wow.
this is a whole new role they developed, and I'll be serving that role starting July, and it'll be interesting. So I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What is the most exciting part, or what was the most exciting part in starting your nonprofit?
It was really just the in starting my nonprofit, the feeling that I can sleep peacefully at night, knowing that I'm making history, change,
Mm-hmm.
and impact. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people could be like, oh, why nonprofit? You could do the same work in a for-profit, but
Sure.
it does not give that impact, I feel like. Just even the word nonprofit has a huge emphasis. So I felt like it was just knowing that there's a reason that when I wake up every morning, I can tell that I'm doing something great and I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited for it. Well, when I sleep, I can sleep with satisfaction at night. And I always tell everyone around me that I would rather do a job for $0 and I love than do a job for billions of dollars with no
Oh,
satisfaction. So I love what I do with my nonprofit or education reform with all the things.
wonderful. During the intro, the audience learned that you liked cooking, that you like to cook for your family and friends. Leading your nonprofit, absolutely. It sounds like it's a huge passion of yours. And working at NCCU on various projects as a student leader. How did all of that come about for you? How did you gain that interest? How did you realize, or when did you realize that that is something that you like doing?
Definitely. So for me, cooking definitely comes from my mom. She is a homemaker, and so she loves cooking, and she cooks for thousands of people as people come to my house. And she just loves doing it. And as I've seen her, I kind of just learned automatically. I've not been taught anything. I just loved the art of cooking. And you know,
Hmm.
when someone tastes your food and then you realize that compliment or whatever it is, you're learning from their comments, and you're just enjoying that you got to feed someone. Because again, at the end of the day, we all live for food. I know
Absolutely.
that
I gotta ask you, I gotta ask really, really quick, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. What is your favorite thing to cook?
there's a lot of Indian dishes I cook so great, which everybody enjoy. I
Hmm.
like this food because I enjoy eating it, and I see that people enjoy eating it when I cook it. So I love making this Indo-Chinese spring rolls. So
Ooh.
so it's not like a traditional spring roll. It's kind of like adding an Indo-Chinese vibe with a
Hmm.
pastry sheet with all the veggies cooked, and it's
Wow.
just top notch, especially with the spices and everything. Because you know, good Indians and Asians, we love those spices.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, that's my most favorite.
And wonderful. And you were saying, go ahead and I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, definitely. And as far as like my other hobbies or interests, really as far as nonprofit or campus leadership, that comes from my life passion of education reform, which I kind of mentioned previously. I've always wanted to be a teacher from elementary to high school, but I was suggested to be a lawyer because of my oral and written communication skills. So I wanted to be an educational lawyer. And then once I got to NCCU, a career counselor heard my passion and like the reason behind my passion and
Hmm.
suggested that I get into educational consultant. And then you know me, I heard all that crazy stuff and I was like, you know what? I was frustrated and decided to reflect. And this has been an ongoing process of reflection because it's been helpful. And I realized when I reflected on my purpose that all the previously suggested or interested careers were relating to the education system. So I realized those roles or careers weren't my goals, rather the purpose behind them was really education reform. So for me, I wanted to define why and what I was doing with it. So
Hmm.
what was that education reform? And which for me, it's including advocating for students' issues that impact their mental health due to standardized testing, GPA, and outdated curriculum. And I've experienced within my community where my friend's sister actually passed away through suicide because of all these mental health issues from the pressure. A lot of people don't understand the pressure students have to go through. So that was where I started. But then as I got into higher education, I eventually learned the staff and faculty issues of being overworked, understaffed, under-resourced, underfunded, and underpaid. And we all
Wow.
know this. And we always blame staff and faculty because they're the front end. Parents or anyone may blame the staff and faculty, but they don't have any control over how government have made policies around the education system.
Hmm.
So these
Hmm.
are issues they go through. And so there are also more common issues of wellness, nutrition, safety, diversity, inclusion, accessibility. I can talk 1,000 other issues, but for my point being, these are some of the goals I've assigned to myself. And I've kind of dealt into why are those the issues. So I wanted to become a higher education professional, to work with my fellow staff and faculty to impact and influence student leaders for building a collective voice to administration and government for change. And I
Wow.
feel like when we think about it, if I were to go to government and just say, oh, I don't like the way things are, they're not going to respond, or think higher education is the ideal place for me. And so really, I work on campus as student leader in various departments to voice issues and support when needed. And this has just been very amazing. And I realized, oh, it's a career. And so after college and that reflection period, I realized my nonprofit is also kind of like that. And so everything combined together is really just education reform.
Wonderful. It's very, very interesting. Was the learning process for each of these things, was it very difficult or very fairly easy for you?
Honestly, of course, all of that wasn't an easy process, but it was worth it because of my love for cooking or passion for education system or education reform. Because I just loved seeing that growth. And I might have made a lot of I guess, uh, what is it? I have made a lot of mistakes, but it's really a lot of learning opportunities I've gone through. I had various experiences that led me into crazy spaces. And
Hmm.
so, but I learned a lot from it. So it's the process is not easy, but the
Right.
result is always very worth it. So I loved it. So at the end of the day, I'm enjoying it.
Wonderful. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. NOSOTROS Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, development of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. Nosotros Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotrosedu.org. Again, that's nosotrosedu.org.
And now back to the podcast. Kamakshi, can we rewind the clocks just a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit about your family?
Well, to give you a background of my family, I definitely have to got to like share my backstory. I was born and raised in India for about 9 years until I moved to Mooresville, North Carolina, obviously US, with my whole family, mom and siblings for my dad's job. My dad came 2 or 3 years before us, and then we came eventually. And so my mom has been a housewife all her life, and she is an amazing mother and wife. Well, I can't like testify that, but like I definitely feel that she is. And my dad is a priest who is my best friend. Again, he's my top best friend. I can share anything with him. I have 3 annoying but sometimes fabulous siblings. We can't we can't praise them no matter where we are. So I have 2 elder siblings or elder sisters and 1 elder brother. So I'm kind of the last or the baby of the family.
The youngest.
Yep. Both my sisters graduated and got married, and my brother's still doing his degree while I'm also trying to walk that stage to graduate. So both my parents have not gotten a bachelor's degree. So we're all first generation students.
Amazing.
At least how it's defined in our my university, it is that like first generation students mean both your parents don't have a degree, or at least one of them don't. So in that case, I was all 4 of us were first generation students, and for some reason, none of my siblings were not part of TRIO or other programs for first gen, low income, or other groups in general. But I'm very grateful to know and use these wonderful programs like TRIO SSS. So again, this TRIO is the family.
Absolutely. And it allowed us to connect with each other so you could tell your story here. How would your family describe you?
Oh my God, they would definitely describe me as a laptop bug, like a book bug. But on a serious note, they always say I'm determined and will achieve the goals I set for myself, no matter what anyone says. Because I always stick. And from my nonprofit point, like I said, my parents, one day, even my dad said, oh, she's probably just going to do it for a month. She's going to stop. And he supported me that 1 month with money. But then he was like, yeah, just 1 month thing. And when he told me a few months back or a few months later, he said that to my doctor. And I heard him say it to my doctor. And I was like, you know what? Let's prove my dad wrong. And I had to prove everything wrong. But like, just everybody knows I'm so determined. And that's what I say. And they always say.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And I'm glad that you're still persevering with a lot of your goals. And it sounds like you've built a lot of momentum too. Can you talk about your childhood, and maybe that'll give us a clue about how you built that momentum? What is your favorite memory? What do you remember most about your childhood?
Well, I guess it's kind of like sad, but also like in a way happy. I always feel my childhood was filled with various health issues, which I still have some various health issues, but really lately have gotten other health issues that relate to it. But I had fun moments too with my friends, family. Everyone in my family loved me for my energy, care, and loving nature. And everybody calls me a positive bug because I just always spread that positivity and always see the positive in everything. So
that's good.
In that sense, I had that extrovert vibe, but also when people need me, I can just calm down and be there for them. So I was that joyful kid or child that tried to spread happiness and love around everyone. So I guess I could still see that in me right now. So it's kind of like continued.
Hmm.
So my whole childhood still continued with even health issues and the vibe. But yeah.
Well, I'm glad that the positivity still reigns on, and it sounds like that's what carries you forward. So that's amazing. What do you remember most about your formative years in education or your elementary school years?
I'm gonna be honest, I honestly don't remember the start of my elementary school as I was in India during the start. And typically when I was in India, it's just me with academics is, oh, I got all A's and A pluses. And that's how like Indian education system, A plus, B plus, what, and so on and so forth. So I was always that top student, and all four of our siblings were. And I mean, if we think about it, I was just there 9 years. It's kind of like basic education. So there's no reason I should be proud of us A's and A pluses. But again, that was that. But again, apart from that, I had significant moments with friends in India, which I barely remember. But once I
Hmm.
came to US, I continued my elementary education in fourth grade. I had a really bad experience due to bullying, but I met
Hmm.
my best friend in fifth grade, whom I'm still friends with now. I literally met her yesterday again. We have this annual meetup. So I love that I got a best friend or a lifelong friend from my elementary school since I came to US. But again, that bullying still stuck around with me but it still helped me learn and grow from with the maturity and everything. But yeah, I love those best moments I had with friends on field trips and stuff like that.
Wonderful. Do you feel like education was something you immediately gravitated toward?
Absolutely not.
No, that's surprising because right, like you're very in the front lines, so to speak, of education and wanting educational reform. So that's
That's
wow.
interesting.
Yeah, very
Right.
interesting.
So that's the thing. Even till now, I don't feel like I like education. That's probably why I'm trying to do reform, because I want to
Mm,
make
mhm.
sure other students experience education to the fullest and can actually utilize it. To me, I'm just trying to get this because it gives you that credential. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna lie. One thing about me, I don't lie, and I'm trying to share that. I'm doing whatever degree I do for that credential because nobody's going to listen to you without that credential,
Oh, that's
unfortunately.
true. That's so true.
So, even though that's unfortunate, we have to go with that. So, but again, that's why I'm here. Everybody can complain thousands of times, but we need at least someone to actually make the change. So
Absolutely.
that's why I'm there. But like I said, I've never immediately gravitated towards education. I think I was a good student with A's and A pluses in India, which was in elementary, like I mentioned. I have been a decent student since starting middle school. I
Hmm.
gave my best, which might not be the average best, but I made it work. I mean, I was in ESO. I had extra support classes for math, reading, and other subjects because I just came to US. So it's definitely a different education journey for me trying to switch spaces. But now people can't even tell I was born in India. They always say, "Oh, I thought only your parents were born in India and you were born here because of your accent and how you're fluent."
Mm.
Thing.
Hmm.
But that's the thing. I always communicate with anyone I speak with according to their language
I
or
see.
their level of fluency. And so I can speak to everyone from any age, any fluency, any language in their own way. Because
Hmm.
that's one thing about a leader. You have to go in their level to make sure you serve them the best. But that's me bragging about myself. But yeah.
I think you and I share this similarity. So, and not to give you a whole spiel about my whole history, but I too grew up in an immigrant household where my parents coming from Mexico and then having to learn English was very difficult. And then you pointed out so correctly and so succinctly that you kind of have to put on two different masks when you're talking in one language versus the other. In English specifically, I felt like you had to speak it perfectly in order for people to understand you. I don't know if that was a something you also experienced.
Well, I had times, and even now I have times with vocabulary and some terms or that pronunciation of certain words. Because sometimes when I try to like prioritize the accent for people to understand, the pronunciation messes up, and vice
Oh,
versa.
sure,
And so
sure.
it depends on the tone, the accent, and pronunciation. Where, like you mentioned, I might have had issues, but again, I make it work. And if anything, I've learned to ask people, well, obviously say no to people, and that's a whole nother story. We can talk later. But like, even with stuff, I've learned and matured into a person where I'm like, if I don't understand anything, I'm open, or I'm okay with asking for help. I'm okay for them to
Mm,
ask me to repeat myself, or have them repeat themselves for me.
you
Because
are. Yeah,
nobody's perfect. We gotta
absolutely.
just,
You are
yeah.
absolutely brave to be able to put yourself out like that and say, "Hey, I'm still continuing to learn." I remember feeling embarrassed when I got corrected, or feeling I just shut down. I think that's usually my very stressed out response is I shut down and I just like avoidant behavior, which I'm still working on, even as a professional. But it's something that I think that folks that are learning a language or in the professional realm definitely have to work on how to communicate effectively and still being able to say I'm okay being corrected, right? Um, so wonderful. I do recall you stating that while you weren't immediately gravitated toward education, it's just kind of something that you did. Did you have a particular favorite subject? Was there a subject that really like at least kept you motivated or at least engaged?
Well, one thing about me, this is not my favorite subject now, but I had a time when I loved math. Like I
No way.
genuinely loved math. I taught math to some of my fellows, and I was like, I had to remind the whole class about math, and the
Hmm.
professor or teachers were so proud of me, and I was like, damn, that was me. And I was so good until
Yeah.
pre-calculus. And since that came into my life, I was like, yeah, that's not my thing anymore. Math is not my thing anymore. But reading and writing has been always my favorite subject and still continues to stay that, because like it's definitely not easy as a for ESL student, English second
Oh, for
language
sure.
student, like previously spoke, but I've learned, and especially in high school, I even got I guess a silly small award of writing guru by my
Hmm.
English teacher. And this was like 10th grade, but like it was really proud moment for me, because from in that same class, I was um told by the same teacher that I'm really bad. I was at the edge of failing, to a
Oh,
point
wow.
where was averaged into the entire class. I averaged into the highest level grade for all the writing assignments in specific. So that was a lot of growth. And since then, I realized I took creative writing classes, other classes, and I just loved writing. Loved the art of it, and the creativity that it gives me to share our voice. And that's one thing you can also do with reform. So hopefully, I've been just ignoring reading and writing, but
Hmm.
hopefully I can use those more to not only learn, but share my voice to the world. Yeah.
What interests, academic or personal, developed for you as you entered middle school?
I would say that my leadership skills peaked as I entered into middle school. I
Wow.
had leadership or entrepreneurial skills during elementary school, such as selling bracelets during PE time, which was fun and crazy to think about my history of entrepreneurship. But
Hmm.
during middle school, I wanted to join SGA and take part in the yearbook committee, which I was denied or couldn't be part of for random reasons. So I wasn't able to participate in SGA or yearbook committee, which I both tried. I was kind of like helping them behind the scenes, because they still in middle school let me be part of it as like a member that was actively participating. One thing about me, I still participate, even if they don't give me that role, still try to help out. So, leadership has developed during my middle school era.
Wonderful. Did those interests carry over into high school?
Definitely, yes. I was so involved on campus during my high school years through various organizations, Clee Club, Catamount chapters for like book club, digital media. I don't know why I've done that, but Latin Club, Catamount chapters, and a theater club, the
Wow.
society. So I was part of like so many things and internships, which I took like five or different roles within one internship over the few months.
Oh my
So I love
gosh.
that. And as previously mentioned, I started Universal Vidya during high school. So definitely that leadership kind of carried over from middle school to high school.
Wow. It, it feels like a lot of the things that you've been doing have been leading up to this nonprofit organization that you're currently heading. And it just if you'll just kind of like entertain my thought for a second, it just feels like all of this prep work was to build your foundation for your nonprofit. It feels like it almost feels like that.
Yes. And I agree with you because that's the thing. I did not realize my nonprofit was education reform actually until like few or 2 or 3 years from now. In my like freshman year when I said I did that reflection to realize education reform was the
Hmm.
reason behind all those careers and why I wanted to get into higher ed. That's when I realized, yes, I want to do higher ed in future, but I obviously will continue my nonprofit journey. And at the end of the day, I'm just using nonprofit entrepreneurship or higher education as two outlets or industries to achieve my primary goal of reform. So at the end of the day, I would say the nonprofit, whatever I've done in leadership have led to my nonprofit, but I
Hmm.
feel like if you think about it, the nonprofit is part of one of the leading points to my reform.
Wow.
So yes, leadership led into nonprofit. Nonprofit is going to be just like those small activities that led into nonprofit. This is going to be a small thing that's going to lead into huge reform. At least that's my goal.
That's wonderful. Well, that's amazing. Can you talk about your experience in high school and what did you enjoy most about it?
Like I said, I love my English classes, so I enjoyed those English classes. I love those student clubs I was part of, and I loved those engaging and interactive English classes in which I learned and grew from. So I thoroughly enjoyed that process and kind of learned that creative writing was a skill that I'm good at. I didn't even
Hmm.
know that's something I had.
Hmm.
Sometimes that's how like this, you don't know you're good at something until you get into it, and you also how you enjoy that. So I enjoyed that process. And so that was one thing. And I loved meeting new people. I love making friends and seeing other sides of my existing friends. So through those organizations, because you never know, maybe one of your friend plays guitar, you wouldn't know until they start your joining your student org. I even in college, I learned one of my friends that worked for me or was my friends for longest time.
Hmm.
He played guitar and I knew that since he joined a student organization with me. So it's
Wow.
kind of like interesting to see other sides of people through this social life. So that's my biggest memories and stuff.
That is wonderful. Was college something you were thinking about around this time in high school, or did it happen for you earlier?
Well, you might have already guessed, but I definitely thought about college and career since early middle school. I
Wow.
always loved, and will love planning and organizing everything. So I had my career planning each week, month, or year, during which my careers have changed over the years. I even
Hmm.
had times where I was like, because I come from an Asian background, you always want to see what does your parents want? Because all the other parents always tell their children, oh, you should do this or this. My
Oh,
parents
yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
with academics or career never told me to do something. They just
Hmm.
said, as long as you're happy, healthy, I don't care what happens. You're just doing this education or career for your independence and for you to grow as an individual. So they've never pressured me. And that's one thing that's different as an Asian experience compared to my
Hmm.
other Asian friends. But I've had times where I asked my parents, and that was one time I bugged my parents, and they said, yeah, education law or gynecologist. Those were the only two careers where I had my parents' input on my
Hmm.
planning periods throughout the changes. But I knew I always wanted to be in college, no matter what career path I ended up in. So I chose a degree I wanted according to my career interest at that pre-college time.
Wow. So you had all this variety of interests. And so this next question is a little bit repetitive, but how did you narrow down what you wanted to study? Because that must have been a difficult process then to have all these interests and have all these possible paths. How were you able to narrow that down, or did you know exactly what you wanted to study when you went to college?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess it's a yes and no because it obviously changed. So I had an idea of what I wanted to study, but it changed over time. I chose social work and I actually got into NCCU as a social work major because at the time of my pre-college period, I was in the interest stage of education law career path. So I
Wow. Yeah.
thought social work would be unique for law school because typically I did not want to do something usual like criminal justice, political science. So I was like, okay, let's try something that relates to law, but also in a different pathway. So I wanted to do
Hmm.
social work. And I always knew my purpose of education reform But throughout the years, I discovered that I could accomplish my goals with various career paths. So I chose interdisciplinary studies, which is my current major, to explore entrepreneurship, leadership, management, and education-related courses, which related to my multi-career path of entrepreneurship and higher ed. So kind of wanted to take that approach to kind of combine everything,
Yeah,
which is actually working out.
that's wonderful. So, did you have anyone help you or guide you in this college path?
Well, I originally would have answered this as a yes, and that's what I still have, but I would still have to say as like a first generation student, the answer is always no. If we
Mm, hmm
think about it as my first gen experience.
certainly.
So generally speaking, not at the beginning or during the path as much, but as I reached out for help, it's like you have to ask for it. I was guided by my mentors from TRIO SSS, career counselors on campus, and others. So it's really just one thing people don't realize, or especially first generation students don't realize, is it's okay to ask for help. We're taught to just have that leadership and do everything on your own,
Hmm
but sometimes you have to ask for help to actually like be on the right path. So I had to break the stigma and just that you shouldn't have to follow the stigma or stereotype that you got to know everything and you're
hmm
not allowed to ask any help. That was kind of like, because you asking help is seen as you're weak.
Oh,
So I
yeah. Yeah,
barely,
yeah.
so I barely asked help until I realized that, see, I don't have to go according to the guidelines, and I needed to break these barriers and stigmas to acknowledge my priority over anything else. So I started seeking assistance. And so I did get support to answer your question, but it was only when you asked help. And that's
Wow.
one thing I always say. There's no one, there's a saying in my language where even a mother wouldn't feed you until you ask her to feed you. So
Mm,
that just basically means that like you would not get anything without asking for help. But it's always taught to youth and anyone, even now, it's still a stigma we can all deal with. It's just like, oh, you're too weak. You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to do this or that because of your gender, your identity, your background. And it's just like, you got to break those barriers. And one
absolutely.
thing about me, I'm that person. I will break all the stuff in my family if I need to for the peace and the priority of my life.
Wonderful. So I have to point out really quickly that TRIO students typically fall under one of two categories. Either you accidentally find TRIO, or you accidentally stumble into the resources to help you find TRIO, or you start outright asking, where is the help? And I think that's where you fall into in that second category of like, you went into it knowing, where's the help? And asking the right questions, or asking where to find the help, which is amazing. Knowing that, what colleges were you considering? I know that you're currently at NCCU, but were there other colleges in your radar, or maybe other colleges that you were thinking about attending?
Well, for me, my siblings and I had restrictions or requirements of having to be a commuting student from home. So I had to choose an institution that was near my house area to live with my family and commute every day. And fun fact, I actually commute to my campus every day. It's a 15-minute drive. And so
Wow.
every day for the
Wow.
last 3 years, and will continue to do so. And so like I applied but I did apply and got into Campbell University, William Peace University, and NCCU, which I currently attend. I applied to St. Augustine University, but did not hear back from them for some reason. The
Hmm.
universities I considered applying, but did not apply to were Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, and NCSU, which were not meeting my requirements. And I wasn't meeting their expectations too. But really, I wanted to apply to community colleges considering financial affordability. But once I got into NCCU, I had to go because if you think about it, the law, NCCU has one of the best law programs. And if I wanted to do that at that time, I had to go to
Mhm.
NCCU for pre-law and law. So that's why I chose it. But again, it's just, I don't regret anything. I'm actually happy with everything. But one thing especially with the point on my requirements in college decision, a lot of students don't realize with jobs or education, it's not them choosing you. Sometimes you are the one that's choosing who you're working with,
I love
who
that
you're going
reframe.
to.
I love that reframe.
Because people don't understand you can go to a university just because of the status. At the end of the day, on your resume, everything is a degree. Just because you got a degree from, I mean, no offense to Harvard, just because you got a degree into Harvard does not mean that credential is not any bigger worth or status than what you got into a community college
Certainly.
or other colleges. So for me, I've decided education is education no matter what. It's about knowledge over education and really you being that matured individual that makes the best decision for you. And
Absolutely.
so for me, I was like, I had thousands of requirements for my family and me. And I didn't want to go to a space that does not value my ethics and my background. And I want to, and this is the same thing I'm doing right now for my master's degree. I have a whole list and a plan where I identify what my requirements are, which I
Hmm.
got to make sure that this is something I always mentor high school students and college students as they navigate to their next education level.
Hmm.
You always got to make your decision wisely because you don't want to get into that toxic environment. Every college is nice. They have their own ways. Just because it's nice for one person doesn't mean it has to be nice for you.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you going through this process, which I personally it has helped me, is really important of you need to prioritize your needs. If your needs are not met at that institution, it doesn't matter if it's an Ivy League. You don't gotta be there. It's just
Exactly.
not this thing.
Exactly. Absolutely. I love the point that you make about looking out for your not only your mental health and well-being and your personal well-being, but also that match with the university, right? Because ultimately, yeah, they could send you the acceptance letter, but ultimately you're the person that decides, I want to go there, and you choose them in return. So I love that reframe, by the way. That was amazing. Talk about the moment you graduated from high school. What was that moment like for you and for your family?
Well, it was the year after COVID, so I was kind of disappointed in the graduation ceremony,
Oh
but still
yeah.
grateful to have a ceremony compared to the class of 2020. Because
Hmm.
my sister actually was class of 2020, and she graduated through Zoom, and that was for her college. She graduated college as I graduated high school or the year after. So I'm grateful at least I had a ceremony. And my family and I celebrated, but it wasn't something big due to COVID and everything. So it was just like a small family celebration. But I'm really excited for my college graduation because it's gonna be lit. I'm gonna make myself so happy and excited for that college graduation.
That's wonderful. You ultimately decided to attend North Carolina Central University. You've already shared some of your thoughts about why you decided to attend there, but are there any other reasons why you chose this college specific? I mean, because the commute is lengthy, but you make it work. But what is it about this college that stood out for you?
Well, I got to say one thing with my background too. In elementary, majority of my elementary students, including myself, got into this other middle school,
Hmm.
but I had to switch my schools to West Cary Middle School, which is where I went to because my sister went there. And
Hmm.
that's one thing, again, that's not trying to like repeat myself, but with families from where I come from, you always want to stick around the same thing your siblings did. So I went back to West Carolina, same thing for the high school and so on and so forth. So even with college, both the sisters went to NCCU. My
Hmm.
eldest sister went to NCCU for 1 year before she transferred to NCSU. And my second eldest sister has actually graduated with double degree at NCCU.
Hmm.
So once I got to NCCU, apart from the point of my primary goal at that time of being a lawyer and them having a best program, my sister was there and I was like, yeah, you know what? Let's go there. And honestly, I did not expect it to happen the way it happened.
Wow.
But
Well, when you say you didn't expect it the way it happened, what's the story behind that? Like, were there certain expectations that you were going into it, or were there things that happened that you were like, well, I wasn't expecting that?
so one thing about that is really thinking about that moment.
Mm-hmm.
really feels surreal. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I feel like I was entering a space of freedom, and I was so excited with wrong expectations
Mm-hmm.
about college from movies. We know college from movies is nothing like how it is.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get me wrong, college is fun, but academics come first, and movies gave
Certainly.
those unrealistic expectations,
Oh
which
yeah.
were obvious, but I didn't realize until I got into college. Also, people told me that NCCU is a small university, but trust me, it is not. It might be a smaller university compared to other institution, but it is definitely a big university. My orientation check-in day, actually, it's an experience where is hands down the most chaotic day of my life and
Whoa.
most chaotic day of my college time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had to take 3 rounds around this big campus to find the check-in area, which was tiring. That's when I realized, yeah, people told me wrong about this university. But I was trapped around into football court, which was between two sides of the campus. I could not go out or in, and it's just chaotic. I thought that was my last day and called my sister as I was about to melt down.
Oh no.
Since she was a student, she told me and she kind of directed me and everything. So that's kind of like how I got in with that like crazy experience and expectation. But again, I would not, there's other crazy experiences, but which we can talk about as we continue. But yeah, that's one crazy way to start your college career.
Absolutely. So, talking about your college career, can you talk about your college experience and what was that like for you? Because entering a college space for first generation student, that you must have been like overwhelmed with a lot of emotions.
Oh, definitely. My college experience was a mix of good and bad experiences, which most of us can agree with. So, my academic journey was complicated due to traveling, but overall, it was an enriching experience. I had great experiences where I met wonderful people and worked with various departments that became my family of friends and mentors. Well, going back to the academic point, I had actually want to share that. I in my freshman year had a 1 point something GPA at the end of one semester. I went
Hmm.
into academic defer and so much more. I was like, what? Am I ending my academic journey? All that stuff. But now I'm almost near 3.0, which might not be the best for others.
That's still
But
amazing, though.
knowing where I started to
Hmm.
now, that
Hmm.
consistency, especially me doing thousand things.
Hmm.
I'm really proud of that academic journey and the growth. But as far as other stuff, I definitely had various bad experiences. I had serious arguments with some of the student leaders due to differences in opinions and behaviors. But one of the primary bad experience that literally changed my entire life was when I was passed on an offensive statement by a non-traditional student. And
Oh,
that was actually what happened. And I learned about that day and on. I actually did not register it until after when my friend told me, and then I actually cried because there was also 1,000 other things that happened on that day. So when that was
sure.
happened, I had worse situations than that specific statement or worse bullying or whatever in past. But at that moment, it just kind of like it was cut. My whole like thread was cut. And I was like, you know what? That was it. And I
Hmm.
cried and I was like, why did I have to do all this? Why do I
Hmm.
have to give people that opportunity? So that's when I learned about boundaries, priorities, wellness, and so much more. Because you can't pour from an empty cup. That's one thing. The other thing is I learned to be kind instead of be nice. Because when you be kind, you won't be taken advantage of. When you're being nice, everybody's taking advantage of you.
Oh, oh,
So
true. So true.
definitely that's what happened. And I had 1,000 experiences, but that definitely changed me because like I said, even though if I had worse experiences, that was like the nth thread, especially me already having 1,000 things in my brain at
Hmm.
that moment. It just kind of broke everything apart and I learned. And that's when I actually broke some of my family stigmas of not going to counseling center because counseling and therapy is not needed. People don't
Ah,
need help. People
uh-huh.
don't need none of that stuff. It's waste
Hmm.
of money, waste of time. You're
Hmm.
fine. And it's just like people don't care about those things in our family and our
True.
background. So it's just like, okay, fine, but I still have to prioritize what is needed for me. And so, yeah, that was the journey.
I'm so glad that you shared the mental health aspect of it. I think for a lot of first generation families and especially folks of color who are very much in that mindset of family has conditioned us to think that therapy is beneath, right? You don't
Yeah.
work out your problems with a stranger. You talk with your family. That's what they're there for. And it just like you, I think it takes first generation students a long time to realize like, no, it is okay to go to therapy. It is okay to go to counseling to deal
Yeah.
with these issues. Um, in all of your experiences, did that feel like you were, or did all of your experiences culminate to that ability to identify a major and say, this is what I'm committing to? And how long did it take you to get into interdisciplinary studies?
Well, before that, I also want to state that with that personal experience that I was sharing, this non-traditional student, he's like really old guy, and
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
happened in a space where all of us were there, and the thing is, I did not know him. So it's like sometimes it happens with people you know, sometimes you just don't know this person, and that's what is weird because random people can come up to you and still you can give that vibe that you accept everything. And
Hmm.
he may not mean it, but it just happens. And one thing I've learned
True.
is
True.
intent versus impact. Just because you don't intend something, sometimes it may impact others differently. And that's one thing we
Absolutely.
learned through microaggressions and stuff like that. But I just had to share that too.
No,
As far
thank
as
you. Thank you for sharing.
with the major stuff, it's a crazy journey too. I changed majors from social work to English education to my current major, interdisciplinary studies. You're
Ah,
like, why did you have to change over so many majors? That's how it happened. But social work was, like I said, the law reason to English, because I was like, you know what, let's just go into teaching route. So I went to English and to kind of like before I had to go to English education, I had to take English. So I went to English and then English education. And then I was like, you know what, screw all this. Let's get to interdisciplinary studies. And I learned it because it was in the same college. So College of Arts and Science and everything actually had interdisciplinary studies, and it was the advisor and that program leader was in the
hmm.
same floor as my English education advisor, and I was like, I was done with the advisor, I was done with that major, and I'm like, it was just too chaotic for me, and I was like, yeah, let's change majors. And this seemed interesting because some people think people choose interdisciplinary studies. A lot of people have misconceptions that people choose that if they don't know what they want to do.
Hmm.
Whereas me, I had clear understanding of what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
It took interdisciplinary studies because it gave me that flexibility and freedom to have that multi-career path. I can take classes for my entrepreneurship while also taking class for education learning, while also just engaging in various electives that kind of match with my vibe, my leadership, and so much more.
Wow.
So that gave me my freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to kind of go back to a point that you made, interdisciplinary studies is usually seen as the major of like, well, hurry up and graduate. Hurry up and do the things because you need to get your credits and get out of the university. But you're right. It's often not seen as the program that really encompasses a lot of different majors, right? You get a foundational understanding of how psychology, business, engineering, various other programs and how they work. So you get that foundational understanding. I'm glad that you highlighted that. So for students who are considering interdisciplinary studies, take note. Um, how did you find out about the TRIO Student Support Services program? Was this something that a situation where you found them or they found you?
I think it was a mix of both. And that's, again, I have the most randomest answers. You don't get the yes or no, you get the random big answer. So
You have a
I
theme.
actually yeah, I believe I met someone from the Office of Student Accessibility Services during the orientation process, whom I shared my interest with when I heard about TRIO SSS, and he introduced me via email to TRIO SSS team, and I was given the opportunity to submit my application. I then followed through the application process to meet my now and always best mentor, Miss Colleen Scott. I don't know if you may or may not know her.
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Right. She's just so amazing. But um I just feel like that was my first family, even before I get to campus. So I always am very grateful to that family and how I got about to them.
What was your experience with TRIO SSS like? What did you like most about it?
You know, I love everything about it, but I love my TRIO SSS family to the core. So that could answer your question. But in short, I enjoy every moment I have or had with them. As a student leader, I'm very busy. So I met with my mentor every once in a while to check in, but we communicate frequently via GroupMe or other communication platforms. I participate in their events and help them out as a volunteer representative. I had so many events where I was the representative for the group, where I helped with tablings or stuff like that for collaboration events. But I am there as like that student or active member.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not physically there most of the time because of all my other commitments. But at the end of the day,
Sure.
they know me, they understand me, and vice versa. So I just love that about them too, because all my mentors, all the other students, most of them had to do some study logs. They had to do this, that, and all the stuff, which I did to a point where they already know I already do all this stuff. They didn't need proof, and they also see that I'm part of all the other stuff. So they're very flexible with me.
That's
And so
good.
one thing I love about my TRIO program, I don't know if it's the same for every TRIO program in every institution, but I definitely love them because of their flexibility and their understanding of a person over um, any of their commitments or their requirements. They're not the type of department, they're like, this is what the requirements, you must align with them. They
Mm-hmm.
work with you. And so the other thing I loved about my experience with them is whenever I meet with any of them, they remind me that yes, I do 1,000 things, but come actually remember your mental health is important and academics come first. So they make sure my priorities were straight back into my academics because you come to college for that. Yes,
Absolutely.
you love to do all this stuff, but they keep me in straight in terms of my goals.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I've got to put you on the spot. What is your most memorable moment with TRIO Student Support Services?
Ooh, that's the hardest part. I told you I love everything. But my most memorable event with TRIO or movement with TRIO SSS was at the end of year celebration or recognition event that was recently hosted to highlight graduating seniors and continuing students. Wow. But I got a Pay It Forward award for being an active member that
Mm-hmm.
promotes the program, which was a huge movement for me to be recognized by my TRIO family because I'm like I said, I might not be that active, or I may not be seen as that active into TRIO SSS compared to my peers,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm there and I always communicate with them and I always share the word with a lot of my members, my fellow people that I meet along the way. So it's just been a shock. Actually, I did not expect it. I wasn't even told. So this was a true surprise for me when I got a Pay It Forward award because I actually care for that group and they actually recognize that even though it's not seen, they know me. And that's what I told you about what I love about them. They see me even though I don't see them frequently in person, the figurative way.
So accolades, and wonderful things that are coming your way. But you were also recently awarded the Commitment to Service and Outstanding Student Leader Awards. So congratulations, first of all. What do these awards mean to you?
Well, awards are a huge motivation and rewarding for our work for anyone, no matter what their level is, which career and whatever it may be. So I highly appreciate the recognition. The Commitment to Service Award was given by our Student Engagement and Leadership Department, and the Outstanding Student Leader for First Gen Student Success Award was given by Student Access and Success Department. And these awards mean a lot to me because I've been volunteering or working with both of those departments since freshman year in some way, shape, or form. Because
Hmm.
technically, SEAL or student engagement was SGA, which I was part about. And I was a volunteer for SAS for the longest, and I still continue to do so, which is why I got a job for next year with them. So it just kind of like continues. And it just, I take immense pride in myself, and I always say I'm proud of myself, which a lot of people think it's weird, but you got to be proud of yourself for that growth.
Certainly.
And I take immense pride in guiding the students, and I love highlighting those departments. So them highlighting and recognizing my work is a huge thing.
As you look forward, because you will be graduating next year in 2025, what does this degree, holding this degree, symbolize for you, and what would it symbolize for your family?
Well, I feel like coming from the background I come from, typically women in my area would get married even when they're 10. Actually, one of my aunts got married when she was 10.
Oh,
And so it's crazy. And even in this generation, a lot of people in a lot of our communities get married very early on their age. And sometimes even if they don't get married, it's just expected or that norm that women don't need education. Women need
mm-hmm,
nothing.
mm-hmm,
They could, even if they were to get education, I mean, even now, I feel like even if I were to get an education, they would prefer me to work at home apart
mm-hmm,
from being in a career. So I have that flexibility and freedom from my parents, which I appreciate. But at the same time, I also know that there's still that expectation of family first, because any
mm-hmm,
women within my background, family comes first, and none of the other things really matter. So I really appreciate and the opportunity that I got from my parents, and I'm grateful for that. People are like, this is a need, education is a need, which I get. But some people, it's actually a privilege, whereas
mm-hmm,
some people it's not. And so for me, I really, really feel like this education and this credential will give me the opportunity where if in case I were in any horrible situation in future, I could still use this certificate, just a paper that shows my credential. Because at the end of the day, like I said, people care for that paper. So I
absolutely.
really appreciate the graduation. I love those moments. I love the experience. But again, this is an opportunity that gives first generation students or students from different backgrounds a space to grow and kind of lean on and use that credential when needed. Because sometimes that credential is needed in worst case scenarios where you can't do nothing, and maybe those that say don't do a job after you get married may say, oh, you need to get a job because your economy or something is not going right, and you
Mm-hmm,
can't do nothing when you don't have that degree.
right,
And it will be too late after you get married to get a job if you don't have the degree because you got married without an education. And
right.
that happens to a lot of people in my background. So I feel like it's more for me that representation aspect where I'm gonna be one of those women in my family. Where there is a lot of women in my family that did get degrees, but like compared to like this generation, last generations, I'll be one of those people that'll be in the wall with a degree that says, yes, they did it. My children don't gotta be first generation students. I mean, I don't take it as a bad thing that I had to be a first generation student. I actually, now that I think about it, I'm happy because I have these resources to rely on and I get that support and I'm happy for that. But I feel like this is this graduation means I am a person where my next generation of don't have to say she's a first year student or she or he does not have to put on their FAFSA that their parents are less than a high school graduate. And so it means a lot for those first gen students. And so for me, my graduation is really that first gen experience, which I didn't think is that serious until you feel it at that moment. And
Yeah,
you
right.
realize with maturity, first gen is legit. That experience, that identity is so huge. And a lot of people
Absolutely.
may not use it, but it's just so amazing how it makes the graduation so much more worth it. You're like, yeah, I made it in my family and I actually made it. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I know that was a long answer, but
No, no, no. You're
it's
great.
gonna
You're good.
be
Great answer.
emotional answers because this is gonna define the future, the history of me and my family. And
Absolutely.
really just the movements and the hard work. Like I said, I might not be had the best academic journey, but definitely the journey to continue and not give up and still pass and graduate while doing 1,000 things as a student leader and also with life, because people don't realize education and career are part of life. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I had a point where education and career is life, which is not it, which it shouldn't be, because you need to prioritize 8 dimensions of wellness. You need to prioritize yourself and your family, social life, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, this graduation means a lot, but that college experience and that graduation is going to tell me how much I learned outside the classroom, which a lot of people think, oh, graduation means you learned a lot, you got a good GPA, you graduated. For
Mm-hmm.
me, my graduation means I graduated on learning, not just on
I'm
just
learning.
on an education. It's more of a knowledge. I had the knowledge, maturity, and the growth from all the experiences I've met with, all the people I met with. So I know that was kind of like a philosophical,
I love that.
but
It's a very good answer. I love the answer. That was wonderful. Can you tell us who or what inspired you to start your nonprofit organization?
I guess my parents don't know how to file taxes, and pretty much any adult I saw does not have any life skills. And I felt like we're thrown into adulthood, expected to know how to file taxes, how to be successful in a career, and so many other things that are life skills, like wellness, that weren't taught at school, at any educational institution, no matter what level you're in. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to create a space that can help people navigate life, because life is more than that 4 core classes we're never going to use again in future.
True.
So I realized that everyone were complaining about the outdated curriculum and other education system policies, when we can advocate and support in providing this knowledge and everything, which
Mm-hmm.
is our actual universal Vidya motto. But I feel like our motto, our name, and everything just merges together with the purpose of that reform in terms of outdated curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, universal Vidya, universal means worldwide, while Vidya in Sanskrit means providing correct knowledge. So we wanted to
Wow.
provide correct knowledge of life skills to a worldwide audience, which is
Love
where
it.
our motto is also knowledge and everything. So everything had a meaning and it kind of
Mm-hmm.
worked out.
That is amazing. So what is your goal for your organization 3 to 5 years from now? Where do you see yourselves? Where do you want to be?
Well, a lot of people might have, they have said a lot of my goals were unrealistic or just too big with any goals. But even with this, maybe people may say that. But for me, I feel like expanding to various states globally through chapters and student organizations at institutions, which is a small goal to me,
Mm-hmm.
is really important within 3 to 5 years, at least in that time frame.
Sure thing.
Because we did put universal in our name, and like I said, that means worldwide, but I think we've not justified that because we're still in that early stage. And I hopefully within the next 3 to 5 years, I would have more time to go towards that actual mission of making this global resource for everyone.
What is something you would like to share with Trio personnel all across the country? If all Trio personnel were listening to this podcast right now, what would you like to tell them?
I got to say, do not give up on passion for incentives. Great things will take time, but will happen. Keep in mind that satisfaction is more important in long term than those incentives. You got to sleep good at night. You can do whatever.
Absolutely.
You just need to know that at the end of the day, if you sleep and feel like, oh, I just did it for the sake of money, and don't realize that you actually had fun at that job. You had great moments. You guys were jumping around in that office about a deal or something like that. You need to have those moments with your team members, with your, and people say work is separate from life, but and I agree with that, but make sure you have some moments with work where they do feel like your family or friends or something. They also or some kind of value into your life. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you got to make sure it brings value to your personality, and you just doing something for the sake of money. And again, it's a privilege. Some people have to do jobs because of the money and they need it. But if you can, try to do something that you want to, not something your
Absolutely.
parents want you to do, not something your colleagues, the society, the stigmas want you to do. Because people could be like, even with Asians, which my background comes from, You could be like, oh, do STEM or
Mhm.
be a doctor, engineer. If that does not help you, don't do it. It's not worth it for you. Because you doing something to harm yourself is not gonna do any better in long term in protecting others in that journey. With an example of medical, let's say you wanted to be a doctor for your family, and then at the end of the day, if you're not healthy, but trying to save the health of thousands of lives, some point you'll be like, you know what, I'm tired of this. And you may not do the right thing to save a person's life. And if that person's life is not saved, you'll regret it your whole life.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's a huge thing and the huge statement. But again, I feel like that's important. And that's one thing I've learned over the years from my friends and family and mentors. And people are like, you're wise above your age. Why do you know all this? And that's kind of like a bad thing for me because if someone says, and that's one other thing, I'm sorry, I have to share,
No, no, no,
is
go for it. Go for it.
a lot of people say when if anybody actually says you're wise above your age, that's not a compliment. They think it's a compliment, and I thought it was a compliment
Yeah,
because
you would
I've
think. Like,
given
one
that.
would assume.
So let me tell you why, because
Yeah, go for it.
the fun part, as I realized, because I was given that same compliment, I guess,
Hmm.
1,000 times, and I was like, let's think back. If you're ever given that point, that means you actually did not enjoy your life. You're too caught up into meeting someone's expectations of being perfect and too
Uh-huh.
caught up into being that perfect, matured person and not enjoy your childhood, not
Uh-huh.
enjoy your life, not enjoy none of those moments, but really focused on being that perfect person that
Hmm.
meets everybody's expectations but yours. And your expectation
Oh,
was set as meeting others' expectations, which is why people are like, oh, you're meeting my expectation, which means you're wise above your age because you have that maturity. When in reality, you shouldn't be matured more than your age. You should
uh-huh.
have experience in your life according to your age, not go
Wow.
above or below that. And so people don't realize it. And I've realized it like 1.5 years ago. And I was like, since then, whenever someone actually tells me you're wise above your age, yes, thank you for it. But at the same time, think about why you're saying that and what journey I had to go through to
Hmm.
receive that compliment. Is that good for me?
Hmm.
Actually not. So think about
Wow.
it that way.
Yeah. That is such a wonderful way to think about, like, when we think about compliments and how we hand out to folks. Like, I never thought like wise beyond your years would be like, think about what I had to go through to obtain that knowledge. And that is a complete shift, at least a paradigm shift for me. Wow, that is amazing. Um, so now you've had a chance to talk to the trio personnel. You've had them think about absolutely taking care of themselves, getting some sleep, and think about their job and absolutely staying passionate about it. But what is something that you would like to say to trio participants who are in trio programs and maybe feeling like a little bit maybe discouraged, or maybe this is the first time being on a college campus, or maybe they didn't get into their dream school? What is one message you would like to send to them?
I'm going to be honest, this is a message I live by past few years. And this is important for everyone, not just participants and the message I gave to personal can be used for the participant and vice versa. But
Sure.
this is one thing I definitely followed recently, which is expect less and accept more. And you will never, doing that two things, you will never have any negative vibes or stress or any kind of mental health pressures. Because as you expect less and accept everything, you're just like, okay, fine, what's up next? And you don't have to take the pressure of analyzing everything and feeling discouraged and having an expectation. And it does not, you not meeting that expectation is just like more negativity into your life. So just make sure you expect less and accept more. That does not mean have less expectations on yourself and give up on your goals. It just really means expect less from others because not everybody's going to meet your expectations. So, and the same goes to others. So, yeah,
Very sage and wise advice. What is one word you would use to describe yourself?
optimist, definitely optimist.
Why optimist?
Well, I don't know if most people know what optimist means, but it's just someone who is inclined to be hopeful and expect good outcomes. And you can always tell, I guess, from the whole conversation, you can already tell I am very hopeful in the future, which is why I am giving that hope to others by being the person of advocacy. And I hope the next generation will join me into in my generation together to make sure we build a change. So I'm hopeful there's change. I'm hopeful we're gonna make the change. And it's not just about education reform with life. There's not a lot of things we don't understand. There's so many issues and people are just covering it under the bus or whatever. And we need to build it out and actually resolve them, but also stay hopeful. Just don't be discouraged that there's so many issues, but acknowledge them and actually stay hopeful to resolve them and work towards them. So I feel like I'm optimist because I have that mindset for myself. And I always tell people to be that because there's always hope. And I'm that person, and I hope everybody's like that because if we're all working together as an optimist person, there's more chances of winning this world.
Absolutely. I 100% agreed. What is a book, TV show, movie, or podcast that you're currently engaged in?
Well, you'll call me a boring person after this response,
No,
but
not at all.
actually nothing. I
Nothing.
just
That's
love to
okay to
listen.
not. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just love to listen to music. And sometimes I do binge watch random Telugu movies or random series and so on and so forth. But majority of my day, you can already tell with all the things I do, I don't engage in a lot of books, TV shows, and stuff like that. But I definitely love music. I can share my favorite genre. Actually, I don't have one. I love all kinds of music. I was gonna say something, but like I was like,
I
yeah, I
felt like
don't
your
have
eyes
one.
lit up to really talk about what you really listen to right now, but then you would realize it was like it was that perfect realization where you're like, no, I like everything right now.
Right. So it's like it depends on the mood, and I'm just like, I love all music. I appreciate, and with that optimistic mindset, I just accept everything. And that's one thing people are like, why are you too positive about it? Because some people may hate some kind of music video.
Oh,
I
sure.
listen to everything as if according to how the actual person written it. So
Oh,
let's speak about books or music or anything. I do it as if how would the person that have made that work want us to take it? How much effort they put in to make this content. And when you listen, read, or do anything in that perspective, you'll be so much more appreciative and acceptive of that kind of content. So I love everything because I'm like, oh, that's nice how they thought of that. You might not understand the meaning behind it. And when you listen and understand stuff through meaning and accept everything, you just love everything.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Kamakshi, it's been a true pleasure to have you on this podcast. It was great hearing your story and your trio journey. I hope to have you again on a future podcast. That would be great.
Thank you. I'm honored to be taking part in this podcast, and it's truly a wonderful experience with great conversations. I can't believe we finished this in like long time, but it felt like 5 minute conversation.
Every single time
So,
it happens, every guest I've had, they said, we spoke for an hour and a half. And I'm like, yeah, we kind of spoke for an hour
yeah.
and a half.
Great. So I'm really happy to share my journey with you all and those that are listening, and definitely that one-on-one conversation with you. It's just kind of we just had this conversation, did not realize we were even recording, and just it freestyled it. And it was
Absolutely.
kind of actually meaningful and
I
really
enjoyed it.
amazing how it turned out. So thank you.
Absolutely. So we have a tradition on the Let's Talk Trio podcast where we have the guests sign off. Do you care to do the honors?
Definitely. So hi, this is Kamakshi Velamuri, and I'm a proud first-year student at North Carolina Central University that is in a wonderful TRIO SSS program. I am the founder, CEO, president of Universal Vidya. You can reach out to me via email, kamakshi@universalvidya.org regarding nonprofit inquiries, or via kvelamur, VELAMUR, @eagles.nccu.edu for any other inquiries on my educational or career journey. Truly, TRIO works.
That was our guest, Kamakshi Velamuri. Thank you for being on the podcast, Kamakshi, for sharing your trio story. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk Trio podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, Felicia Rivera, TrioJoblist.com, Jaded Electronics, NOSOTROS Education Center, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Our base patron level starts at $1 a month. Become a corporate sponsor by placing an ad on the podcast. Email us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. Be sure to follow the Let's Talk Trio podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of Let's Talk Trio podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk Trio podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. This episode was recorded Saturday, May 25th, 2024, on my birthday. We are in an election year. I strongly urge our listeners to exercise their right to vote. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.